if it is difficult for women to gain employment, I'd say that when you work backwards, before employment, like education, etc., then I think one of the factors that has created trouble is just the fact that women don't have equal access in the way we'd like them to have to education, or like their education is not as prioritized by their family.
And I think it really depends also on the sector that you're talking about. So, for example, the caregiving sector is often seen as in a lot of societies, and particularly Australia, caregiving and cleaning and hospitality sector is overpopulated with women because it's seen as a menial job. And so a lot of it's easier for a woman to get a job in those sectors, and so she's sort of pigeonholed into having to do that.
It is a really complicated picture of how, you see people going into the workforce, how you see people entering different industries, that today still in the United States there are more men than women in STEM fields, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
It's the same in Italy when it comes to education. Even though we have pretty much equal opportunities, fields are quite separate. So when it comes to engineering jobs in particular, which are also one of the best paid jobs in Italy right now, are
mostly male-dominated.
Mostly male-dominated. Yeah,
And it's fascinating that in a lot of industries there is actually no reason that the men are not on average more qualified than the women.
But I think sometimes maybe it also depends on what kind of industries you're in. Like for me personally, like before I work as a interpreter, like translating and interpreting stuff, and then almost all the different kind of like if it is a engineering company and they are looking for interpreters to work overseas, definitely they will say on the ads like men only, because they think that those men can stay there for a whole year and then they can just get back for like 10 days or so and then they can go again. Now like some of the enterprises are like kind of doing their own thing to improve the situation. The president of Alibaba, Jack Ma, and he said, like, why do Alibaba succeed? Like the secret is like we hire more women, and we hire women because they are more like you said, like caregiving, and they are more like when they are dealing with stuff, they are more gentle.
When it comes to maternal leave, I think an important development that we saw in Italy was that paternal leave was actually made compulsory by the Italian law in 2012. So relatively late, I think, but considering that some societies do not have that.
I think it would be really important to have kind of equal support for men to take paternity leave, or to consider the fact that different families have really different organization systems for child care.
I was really happy to learn that in 2016, so earlier we had 12 weeks minimum paid maternity leave, but it's now been increased to 26 weeks. So we get 26 weeks of paid maternity leave.
In China, the length of the maternity leave is like 7 months.
And is it paid?
It's basic income.
I'm curious about something. I'm wondering like if it's if it ranges from 120 days to 7 months, I'm wondering if that ever influences like employers to maybe not hire women, because they can, it's kind of they can foresee that kind of a future, right?
Yes. When they are at the job interview, the interviewer will ask them, are you getting married?
We have a similar problem in Italy, which is having women signing resignation contracts. So it's like wide contracts, that's how we call them, because between the woman and the employer there is this implicit agreement that in case she gets pregnant, she will resign.
I think that's also depends on the different industries and their bosses.
Speaking to the United States, this is another thing where I think there's a gap between law and practice. So I think that there is a way in which we don't see these services necessarily transitioning into information about it, because women don't always know that these laws exist to protect them in an interview context, but then also employers still trying to get around that.
a serious issue, and it requires the society to have not just laws but also very well developed welfare systems in which there are structures in which the elderly can be taken care of, where children can be taken care of and at an accessible cost. In my country, in Italy, stalking, which is quite a widespread phenomenon, only became a criminal offense in 2009 with a new law that passed in order to protect victims of this very, very widespread offense.
In 2005, the Indian law on domestic violence really broadened to include like economic violence, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, coercion. Even if you're unmarried but you've been living with someone for a while and there's abuse, that would also fall under domestic violence. And people have like won cases.
China also introduced the law against like domestic violence in like, if I'm not remembering
2016.
2016.
Just
Ours was
pretty
in
recently.
1975. So.
Yeah.
And it also brings
think
the family sphere into the public sphere. And that's a really interesting step for China to make, in that a lot of us already consider crimes within a family as crimes, not as family affairs, but China recognizing that in that law is really interesting.
It was also a public process. It was really interesting that it was, I think, the first law in China that came out after a deep discussion between different actors, not only the government, but also NGOs and all sorts of
Different
organizations from the civil
paying
society
attention on that.
were involved in the process, and I think that was a sign that the society demanded for it.
In China, there's also a national hotline that you can call if you are like, if you think you are in like trouble, and then you can call them to consult whether like what can I do, what I encounter, and is there a way to protect me in a meaningful or in a very good way. Then this kind of consultant will tell you what kind of help that they can give. I think it's also a pretty good thing for those kind of women. Like at least they can be somehow protected, and then they can seek more professional help.